Hello, welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Iain McNay, and today our guest is Bernie Pryor. And Bernie's a spiritual teacher and has had many amazing experiences and adventures over the years. We're going to find out more about that and Bernie's work and more about him as a human being and also a spiritual being, so to speak. So welcome, Bernie.
Hi Ian, good to be here.
And let's start when you first had your first spiritual experiences, I think when you were 5 years old.
Yeah, you have to understand, I did not know they were spiritual experiences, you know. To me, to understand what a spiritual experience is, you have to develop the mind, you have to develop in life. So from 5, I was experiencing just falling into bliss states and depth and just experiencing also, let's just call it, other beings.
So let's just 5 years old. What does falling into bliss states feel like? How do you interpret that when you're so young?
I know it's so. Maybe this is a rare experience. I've only heard this from 1 or 2 other people who are now regarded as spiritual teachers or masters. I was constantly in a state of joy, but also I would experience incredible stillness where there would be nothing, just nothing but this depth of stillness. That I can know that now. Obviously, I didn't know that then. My parents just thought I was a very quiet young lad, but also how I could just be full of joy, doing nothing but doing what I was doing. And so, but I was also experiencing, particularly at night, funny enough, beings coming. That's the only way I can describe that now. They were initially lights, and when I spoke to my parents about this, often they would just push me away or just close it down, say, you know, he's got a good imagination. And my mother bought a whole set of these, this cutlery, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was a cutlery. And I said to Mum, look, that's what I would see. And on the end of this cutlery was this shrouded figure, but with no face. And that's the kind of experience. There's a particular name for that cutlery. It's gone from me now. But I just, that's what I experienced, Mum. And she just looked and put the spoon down to eat your meal. Yeah. You know, that's the only way I could experience, get it across to her, because I didn't have the intelligence to know exactly what that was. It was so innocent and so wonderful. I couldn't put it across to anybody. I thought that everyone was in this experience, but clearly not.
Because you were also seeing beings as well. Seeing
beings, knowing what was taking place. I mean,
so what does seeing beings mean when you're 5, 6 years old?
For me, I would have experiences of light that nobody else could see, and it would communicate itself to me. But the communication was happening, let's just say, inside. And I would say things to my parents about what this was, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So basically, as a child, I kept it to myself.
A lot of kids have this, don't they?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, because we're actually born, as it were. We come in as a being, but then we get, let's say, hooked into a body-mind identity. It's a natural process of being or consciousness endeavouring to integrate itself into the body-mind identity. That's what I'm now discovering and talking about, obviously. But at first, if you have a look at a child in a pram or in their cot, they're just gurgling away. They're not gurgling away with being. They're just being what they are, a being. But they have no integration. They don't know they're lying in a cot. They don't know that that's their mother or father. They don't know any of that. They just, Mum and Dad thinks, oh, look, he's seeing us. But actually he's not. He's knowing your being. She's knowing your being.
Well, they're not really experiencing separation.
No separation. Being, real being is no separation. Yeah. Being can know being completely as oneness. So as children, there will be that around. But then the integration process of being coming into embodiment. So then the child would know I'm lying on a cot, begin to integrate those things, and quite naturally come into the body, the use of the mind, the use of the will, choice, many different things, you know, that we'll probably touch on in this interview. It's a very natural process, but because most people at this particular stage of development of human consciousness still experience or think of a higher God beyond themselves, and yet at core everyone is that I. We tend to bring up our children looking to find their identity outside of themselves instead of connecting the inner with the outer.
Right. So let's stay in sequence first with what happened with you, and we'll look more in depth afterwards. So, and then well, just take us through the kinds of experiences you had. Not in great detail, but give us a feel of the way things emerged for you.
Okay. Well, at one time I was around 9, something like that, and my parents had just stepped out the door onto the next door neighbours, and suddenly a huge storm, well, appeared to be a huge storm for a young lad, appeared, and there was thunder and lightning. I was in the house on my own, and for no reason at all, fear came up inside of me, and yet also something else began to happen inside of me. And I had this love, not that my parents were Christians, or they are of the Christian faith, but they weren't practicing Christians. And I experienced who I know to be Jesus just stepping through the window, just this whole vision, and the communication was totally within. No words said, it was a total communication of everything's okay. And this whole calmness just came into me, that everything was okay. That kind of thing would have
a wonderful feeling.
I mean, it was everything I knew to be true.
Yeah.
You know, not the Jesus thing, but what that being is. That being is the same as I am inside, the same as everyone is inside, pure being. You know, the image was Jesus, but it was the pure being of Jesus, communicating with the pure being of this one. So there was this union that took place that my being to his being recognised, and that just was so beautiful and so calming, so real. Yeah. I could not explain that to anyone, you know. I thought that I had to follow that path for a little while.
And you assume that other kids of 9 had the same thing happen, did you?
I began to discover they didn't, because I began to discover that in my talking to other children, they thought I was a little bit loopy, you know. Okay. But what they found with me was that I had this ability to bring them into what I will now call a deep space. Like, for instance, around where we used to live, there were these mounds in the earth. I now know them to be energy centres, and I used to just take the children after school, say, "Come on, let's go and sit over there," and we used to just hold hands, you know, and we would just drop through everything. So I was kind of getting to be known on that level. I mean, who is this guy? This is what he can do, you know. Yeah. This is what happens.